Boots. Dingfelder.
Here.
Maniscalco.
Here.
Vieira. Carlson. And Citro.
Here.
We have a fiscal quorum.
Thank you very much. Board members, I would like to thank you for allowing us to attend Miss Pat Frank's ceremony at the renaming of the courthouse. She's a lovely woman. She is a trailblazer, and she has meant a lot to not only this state, this county, and this city. And I thank you all for taking our break. Miss Van Loan.
Good morning again, Chair and CRA board members. Returning to the agenda, item number 2, Ms. Burton, as mentioned earlier, will return at the November CRA board meeting to make her presentation.
Two things, Ms. Van Loan.
Yes.
Let the record show that Councilman Goose is here. May I have a motion to continue item number 2 until next month? So we have a motion from Councilman Dingfelder, seconded from Councilman Maniscalco. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Let the record reflect that it passed unanimously. Excuse me, with the exception of Councilman Carlson. Thank you, Ms. Van Loan.
So for item number 3, our staff reports. In the interest of time for anyone listening in the public, if you do go to the city clerk's website, click on the CRA board agenda, click on item number 3. On the right-hand side, you will see a PDF that is our full PowerPoint. This morning, we have reduced the PowerPoint down to just a few slides for each of the CRA members, just to hit the most important items. So if you can bring up the PowerPoint, I'll bring up Mr. Jesus Nino.
Thank you, Michelle. Good morning, everyone. This is Jesus Nino, West Tampa and Drew Park, Urban Development Manager. I'll keep mine short as possible as well. The West Tampa CAC, we're working right now closely with our contract management so we can do a parking study for the Main Street area. Currently, staff is working with that department so that we can evaluate some of the consulting firms out there that can do the work. In addition, we're working with the city's Parks and Recreation Department, so they have created concept designs for a few of the parks over in the West Tampa area, Salsinas, Ray Park, and Fremont Linear Park. Fremont's a little bit more difficult just because of the right-of-way issues, but we're concentrating more on Ray Park. We actually have a meeting on Monday with the CAC to discuss that concept further. You can see one of the preliminary concepts there on the screen. The next item we have is that we have selected another contractor to go out there and do some alleyway cleanups for us in West Tampa. So that's Nelson's Tree Company. They will be doing a series of cleanups for us, a series of alleys cleanups for us. Hopefully they can get started next week. At the same time as they're doing that, we're going to be putting out signs saying that this was initiated by the CRA, and we're going to be educating some of the property owners there on their responsibilities. The cleanup will include picking up just materials, landscaping, and applying herbicide on the alleyways so they can become accessible to whoever needs to get through them. And hopefully in the future we can do a little bit more improvements with some paving and so on, wherever it makes sense. At the same time as they're doing the cleanup, we're going to be issuing out another bid for another series of alleyways to be cleaned out over in the West Tampa area. That concludes, and we also have the clean team. They have started cleaning the Main Street area. They've been doing it now for a few weeks. We're still adjusting some of the days and times that they do that. So far they're doing a pretty good job, but there's a lot of work to be done still with that item, so we'll keep you posted. That concludes the West Tampa presentation. If you have any questions.
Are there any comments or any questions? Thank you very much, Mr. Munoz.
Next, we have the Drew Park. With Drew Park, one of the main things we're doing now, a few years ago, if we can bring the slide back up, please. A few years ago, the Drew Park CAC and the CRA, they did the streetscape improvements for Lois Avenue. Just because of all the activity out there was light industrial and so on, and just the weather and so on. Some of the landscaping is starting to deteriorate, so we're working with the CAC members and our parks and our mobility and other divisions so that we can bring it back to looking a little bit better. Some of the medians have been run over by big trucks, so we're going to get that landscaping put back in place. Some of the trees, the weather has pushed over, or some might even have died, so we're going to replace those and just beautify it back up a little bit more. So that's the main item for Drew Park, and that's going to be pretty exciting once it's all looking beautiful again. That concludes Drew Park. Any
Comments
questions?
or any questions? Again, thank you, Mr. Nunez.
Thank you very much.
Mr. McRae.
Good morning.
Good morning.
In the essence of time, we cut down on our slides, but just wanted to bring forward the first thing would be the strategic plan update, where there was a presentation to the CAC on September 7th by Mr. Pete Seckler with GAI Consultants, and discussion about projects and projections as it relates to the TIF dollars in future years. Also wanted to share with the community that the presentation and slides were all uploaded to the We Are East Tampa website for their consumption. Second thing, many of you were aware that we were going through the elections process on September 14th. On the slide you see currently, just wanted to share the results. We had a total of over 100 folks that voted in the election. 96 of those ballots were cast in person. 12 were done electronically via email. And there you will see the new members or returning members to the East Tampa CAC, and their terms will expire on September 30th, 2023. We just had the election of chair and vice chair. The current chair is Ms. Fran Tate. Vice chair is Ms. Dominique Cobb. Look forward to working with them. And we do have our orientation for the new CAC members and returning CAC members on October 21st at Cyrus Green Park. And that concludes my report.
Comments or questions? Councilman Goods.
Good morning, sir. Good morning.
Good morning.
There will be a couple of probably motion items I'm going to talk about when new business comes as it relates to the tree grant.
Yes,
and
sir.
also the clean team. So I'm going to make those motions, just give you a heads up. I did talk to Ms. Van Long. I understand that we're still getting multiple applications for the tree grant, and we're moving very slow because the committee is still trying to muster up about minority contracts, getting contracts. But I know doing the research, we don't have enough minority tree cutters. We have a lot of lawn care services, and that hurts us in this process. We want to be able to see how get a partnership with these tree companies and find an arborist, because that's a key component of this thing, and we need to find an arborist. And I've had given several names, email you guys of 2 arborists. You know, we need to get that moving, and I'm going to be making a motion later in reference to that we can move forward while we're still trying to work on how we want to critique the minority side of it, but we need to go ahead and get trees cut because the pile is keep piling up. So just want to let you know that I'm going to make a motion to get that program moving. Too many calls, and also as it relates to the clean team, giving me a report on that clean team, because as we talk, when I drive around, they're picking up the bulk of some of these trash. But when you drive away, you have the small debris which should be raked up and the area look presentable versus just picking some garbage up, the big stuff, and leaving the trash behind. So I'm going to be making some motions about that later on, sir.
All right, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Cedric, I just do want to thank a few people, especially during this this election. Our supervisor of election, Craig Latimer, for volunteering be able to tally the ballots again with all the people of East Tampa, all the residents of, that came out for the election. I would also like to thank Ms. Brenda Thrower for her work during the interim of this, and to congratulate all the officers and newly elected CAC members in East Tampa. Thank you very much. Cedric, is that all for your report today?
Yes, thank you.
No, thank you very much, sir. Good morning, Ms. Orr.
Good morning. Courtney Orr, Ybor City Development Manager, and I'll be starting on the 3rd slide of all the Ybor slides. This highlights key responses from our third iteration of the Ybor City Resident and Worker Study. And I'd like to commend our CAC because they really do listen to the community, and the fiscal year 22 budget was actually approved ahead of the results of this study. And much of the items that were brought out from the residents and the workers were addressed from financial support in our fiscal year 22 budget. So that's great news. One item in particular on this slide is that both demographics, both residents and workers, strongly supported the community's interest in rebricking 7th Avenue. So we are interested in engaging a consultant to do a cost feasibility study of what that would look like should we be able to move forward with rebricking 7th Avenue. Just a couple of notable events. There is a Heart of Ybor. We had a campaign earlier launched this year for the Heart of Tampa campaign. And out of that, we have segued to the Heart of Ybor Community Art Contest, which was launched in August. And we are accepting entries through October 22nd. And then actually that last slide there, sorry, backing up, that is there was some imagery there of a great Saturday turnout. We had to celebrate the grand opening of the Tampa Baseball Museum at the Al Lopez House that flanks Centennial Park in Ybor. Thank you. That concludes a quick Ybor highlight report. Any
Councilman Carlson.
questions?
Probably like others here, I'm getting asked constantly about the rebricking of 7th. Do we have any idea what the timeline on that might be?
Well, we're going to engage Mobility Department to put out an RFP, or not an RFP, a request for a consultant to actually be able to do the cost feasibility study. So now that these results have come out and are live as of the end of September, I've reached out to that department to help us move forward with identifying a consultant that can help us with the cost feasibility study. So we're ready at this time. We have monies budgeted in the fiscal year 22 budget to launch that as soon as possible.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you, Ms. Orr.
You're welcome.
Good morning, Michelle Van Loan again for the last 4 CRAs. I do want to mention we did post the position for the Downtown Channel District, Central Park, and Tampa Heights Riverfront CRA manager last week. It's also was immediately posted at the Florida Redevelopment Association website. We are going to the FRA annual conference the 26th, 27th, and 28th of October, and we're trying to get it even on their conference app. And then I'll start receiving applications from HR following the conference in case we have any last minute applications that weekend after the conference. So we are working on that, and the position is posted. So with that, if we can bring the
Ms.
Yep.
Van Loan, are you going to be bringing back a report of that conference, the highlights of that conference?
Yes, I certainly can.
I would like that very much. Councilman Goods.
Mr. Long, good morning. I did see your org chart here on my desk here. Just wondering, in reference to your position, in reference to the housing and the communication person, when do we look to have them on board?
So we, right now it's in the system. HR just is waiting because we're in line with everybody else. Once they do one little tweak in the system to allow me to approve it, it will get posted. We're expecting that to happen imminently. And then the next one they post will be the housing counselor, and the communications one will post right behind that. We've been going in the order of filling the vacancies first and the positions that were not customized in job descriptions as we go through. We did need to, for East Tampa, focus on getting the ED specialist to replace Mr. Marks filled as a priority. We have received all those applications, and we are starting to set up interviews over the next week or two, Cedric McPray and I, to go through that.
Okay, the only one I question is the communications person. Because over a year now, we've been talking about it, and I thought that was already in the system to get that process moving. Because I was at a meeting the other night, and people were still talking about communication with programming. So I was under the impression that at October 1, we would have a person working.
I had hoped, but being short-staffed for me, getting all this stuff done, I have to pick the deadlines at times first. So yes, all of that is now fully moving forward, and we fully funded it in the FY22 budget.
All right, I thank you for that, but for me right now, the two most critical positions that we need to get filled right away is that communication person, so they can be able to design, get flyers, and get stuff out to the residents about these programs, because constantly I'm emailing Kenya and other people about getting information to these folks in the communities. Just the other day when I was out reference the clean situation with Mr. McCray, 4 or 5 elderly people on Booker T have no clue. So that's why I'm pressing that communication first. That's really, really pivotal for us to change some of the dynamics and getting the word out in East Tampa.
Understand.
Thank you. I know you're working hard.
Anything else before I proceed?
Yes, one more time, Councilman Carlson.
Sure.
Just to add to that on the communication, there was some confusion, I think, in the public or media about what that position is, and the constituents are asking us to communicate with them more. And we as a CRA have never had any communication apparatus, and there are things going on. For example, we just talked about the re-bricking of 7th Avenue, setting people's expectations in Ybor, letting them know the road is going to be ripped up. All that stuff needs to be communicated, and so it's not an effort to try to promote the CRA. It's an effort to try to communicate to the constituents, and also there are constituents that are not in CRA areas that wonder why they're subsidizing CRAs, and so we need to communicate with them as well. Thank you.
Ms. Van Loon.
Okay, for the downtown CRA, again, I'm just going to hit some of the highlights that are priorities for the CRA board for this month. We did hold the September public meeting for the final master plan design selection. It was well attended. There was very good discussion, and so now that project is again moving forward, and we are expecting 100% construction drawings for Kid Mason Community Center in mid-October, so soon, and those will go through review and then be able to be issued to go out for bid for a contractor to then get that project implemented. So with that, are there any questions about downtown?
Any comments or questions about the downtown CRA? Thank you very much, Ms. Van Loon.
For Channel District, we just had Kimmons at our Channel District CAC meeting last night, going through the timing of all the various projects. We are fairly complete with Channelside Drive. You're watching, we are now south of Kennedy and Whiting. We're now at Whiting. With Channel District, you're starting to see with Channelside Drive, the landscaping, the wonderful paving on the sidewalks. As it moves forward and the landscaping going in, we will be done reasonably soon with Channelside Drive, and then we will start moving back up to Twigs and some of the others, Cumberland and Twigs, Cumberland, Whiting. Sorry, I can't name them all right off the top of my head as quickly as the CRA manager does. So, but we went, Kimmons went over all of that with our Channel District's CAC last night, talking about the timing, talking about traffic patterns to make sure that we are keeping all the traffic and not impeding the businesses and the residents as we move through with all of these street projects. Any questions about Channelside?
Comments or questions? Quick comment, Ms. Van Loon. I have gone by the construction there on Channelside Drive, and from Kennedy to the roundabout, even with the construction going on, I find it to be moving much smoother. Thank you.
Thank you. For Tampa Heights Riverfront, at the last meeting of the CRA board, we had the request by the developer and Tampa Heights Riverfront to have a community redevelopment plan text amendment to be able to include cultural assets as part of a priority for that CRA. We did go to the CAC. They did approve that paragraph in addition to the community redevelopment plan, and that will be a reso on your agenda later this morning, and we will then move through the approval process with the Planning Commission and City Council and the public hearings. And that's it for Tampa Heights, if anyone has any questions.
Questions or comments on the Tampa Heights? Councilman Carlson.
I just want to say, I've been going around the city talking to arts people, and there's some underground discussion about adding another Tampa Heights CRA. And I just wanted to say, as I've said before, I'm totally against adding additional CRAs. But if there are arts assets that that we should put in the neighborhood, or if there are things that we should invest in the neighborhood, then we should hear those. I think CRAs are for communities that don't have discipline in spending money in an area that needs it. And if there are amenities that Tampa Heights needs outside the development area, I think we should look at those seriously and consider them, and they should come out of the larger budget, not in a CRA, because CRAs are a long-term investment that takes money away from other areas. And instead, if we look at it strategically, like the mayor's doing with the mobility study and the park study, then we'll be able to focus on the areas that most need it instead of having the money trapped in one particular area. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you, Ms. Van Loan.
Okay, our last CRA is Central Park. We've all been hearing a lot about the Ybor South and the development going there. They are headed for their first hearing on their zoning to make that project start moving forward November 18th. And we also have the buildings of the Independent and the Legacy at the Tampa Housing Authority at Encore that will be opening soon, adding about 500 more additional market rate units in addition to all the affordable and low-income senior housing that has already been established at that property. And any questions with Central Park?
Comments or questions? Thank you, Ms. Van Loan.
Moving on to item number 5, at the last CRA board meeting, I was requested by Councilman Carlson to come back to you and review our org chart and our associated staff costs. And then there were some additional questions about Ycdc specifically and the Ybor CAC and staff. This is our org chart. This is what was approved as part of our budget. Right now, we have 15 positions with the 3 new positions that are created in the FY22 budget. Of the 12 existing positions, 2 of those are vacant, being the ED specialist in East Tampa that we're in the process of filling, and replacing Valerie Farrell for the Downtown Channel District CRAs. So these are our positions in East Tampa. You will have the ED specialist. You have the OS, that is Eva Jackson, Eva Hughes, who sits primarily in East Tampa, but also has some duties for the department, our P-card and reconciliation and procurement processes that she does for the department. And then we have added the housing counselor, so that will be 4 positions within the East Tampa CRA. In Drew Park, we have the CRA manager and the support ED specialist, for both Drew Park and West Tampa. In Ybor, we have the CRA manager and 2 professional specialists. One is an ED specialist and one is an urban planning 3. So we have 3 full-time positions out in the Ybor area. And then for our downtown Channel District, Tampa Heights, and Central Park, we have the CRA manager and then that urban development project coordinator. And with all of that is our OS that is downtown, that again serves primarily the 4 CRAs downtown and additional assistance to the other CRAs as needed. And she also is that primary OS for Drew Park and West Tampa. And then for the 3 additional positions, an aide, so that we have an actual aide in our department for the director, the communications position, and then that extra housing counselor. So are there any questions about the positions themselves? And then I'll get into more detail.
Councilman Goode.
Ms. Villalon, explain to me what the ED specialist is.
So that's what I used to do. So the ED specialist is the classification title to the project implementation staff. So you have the CRA manager, and then you have their assigned staff person that helps with the Facade Grant. So when I was no longer an ED specialist, Ashlyn now handles the Facade Grants. She helped Mr. Nino write all the new grants, and she will then actually be processing and doing all that paperwork of the 4 new grants that you just processed, that you just approved for West Tampa. In East Tampa, they're the Facade Grant, they're the tree trimming grant. They staff the subcommittees, they do all that follow up. When we do construction, when we did 22nd Street, as we do sidewalks, they are liaison to mobility and transportation and Parks and Rec when we partner with them on parks improvements. So your ED specialists are your project implementation people assigned to the CRA manager.
So why does the E-Board group have a ED specialist and an urban planner 3?
In Ybor, you have staff that has been there well over 20 years where we have had turnover. So the Ybor staff, specifically Corrine Linnebrink, she came from an existing position with the city, and that was her title in the existing position. When she was moved into the Ybor CRA, they just kept that title with her way back then when. She's been here more than 20 years, and there has not been a need in the sense that her job has her job title and responsibilities are still in alignment with that job description, so it has not been needed to redo that classification. At some point, when she does leave the city and retire, we will look at reclassifying that position.
And the only reason I asked that because East Tampa has the largest CRA. And to me, that means extra help with Ybor with 2 people versus East Tampa with 1.
So with East Tampa, part of this had to do with the recession. So East Tampa used to have 2 full-time ED specialists, the CRA manager, and the full-time OS that was only East Tampa. As we went into the recession, as our staff left through attrition, when Lorna Alston left, they just eliminated that position, and it was left with just me. As we lost an employee that was supporting downtown under Drew Park, they just expanded my responsibilities, and we all went from, again, that 19 down to 10 positions. In Ybor, when their OS left, they used to have a full-time OS. And when that person left the position to go to a different department, that position also was eliminated. So much of our downsizing during the recession was due to voluntary attrition of the employees. And the other staff was just long-term.
My only concern now is that with the amount of projects are now going on in East Tampa, and that we're removing with some other things that may be coming on the horizon, I look at the workload to getting things done. And I know you guys are working very, very hard. I know you work very, very hard, Michelle. But I just want to make sure that we have enough staff to get the job done, so people don't be waiting for projects or not waiting to hear back. So that was my concern when I saw the position, the organizational chart is, does East Tampa need more help, because they are the biggest, and now they're getting more projects on the table now to move as it relates to that. That's why when we talk about these acronyms, the Ycdc and the East Tampa Partnership, I've been at 2 events. I missed you at the ballet, matter of fact, on Saturday, Ms. Citro.
What? I'm sorry?
The ballet Saturday. Missed you at the ballet. I think you went to the ballet Saturday. You know, several people were telling me about the Ycdc and confused the CAC and the CRA, where they got some funding from, and it's very confusing to people. When I go to the partnership meeting the other night, people are confused. That's why it's so important for this communications person to be able to tell people what is the difference. People are totally confused, and where funding is coming, who has the right to do this, who has the right to do that. So that's why I'm so adamant about this communication position, and also taking a look at an additional person with East Tampa, because I'm just saying the amount of work that's going on now, you're overloaded. That's why I asked you to make sure you put somebody to help you as well. But we need somebody else. There's too many things going on in East Tampa, and Mr. McCray just coming back fresh himself. It's a lot of work, especially we don't have anybody there to help him right now. So we need to look at probably adding somebody to that. You get back with us on that, but I think there needs to be an additional person to get these projects moving. Thank you.
And later, as I get into it, I will talk about that Ycdc and partnership. Are there any other questions just about the staffing?
Yes, Councilman Carlson.
Just one of the questions that I get, and maybe others get it too, is people are concerned about overhead with CRAs, and that one, they want to make sure we're not supplanting something the city should be doing instead of CRA. Number 2 is that they wonder why we're adding staff, and why do we have, like at Ycdc, why do we pay rent and all these other things? Why can't we just use minimal staff and just look at it as a grant-making organization? Is there, you said you're going to the statewide conference. Is there some kind of benchmark or rule of thumb that you use on staff? Is it based on the number of projects, or is it based on the amount of money that's rolling through? Is it a percentage of the money in each district?
When we start out, so there's a couple of benchmarks. For us, we try to look at keeping our administrative costs very low as a percent of each CRA's and our, you as the CRA agency, your total budget. And so when we do that budget book that we gave you, and we're getting some printed, right at the beginning of the overview, we list every year for you what our administrative costs are, and we don't even leave it up to you to go look at it was last month or last year. We actually point out it went up by 0.2 or it went down and what it's been. And I believe this year we're at 5 point something percent. And for looking at any organization as an administrative cost, that's a very small cost of your total budget. As far as how we look at allocating, originally it varies by CRA, and no, there is no benchmark because there's so many CRA examples and different types of work and different types of sizes. When East Tampa first started, we had the community outreach and we had a lot of construction projects. And so most of those construction projects are handled by city departments, and then our staff attend those meetings, are involved. We are now evolving, that we had not had in the past, of developing more and more programs and grant programs, which are much more process intensive and time consuming to manage all of that and to take the time to provide good customer service to the applicants and walk through that. Until we got to this year, most of our grants were grants where we piggybacked off of and supported HCD or other organizations, and it was more of a matter of us keeping up to date and a budgeting tracking. We had our Facade Grant, which was our biggest, but even in Ybor, there are two smaller grants. They've had one each, and it was the sponsorship grants. Now with all of these new grants, as we've seen with the tree trimming grants, we will be needing more staff. So for what we look at as increasing staff, and that's why I did not ask for more until we see what that workload is, until we see what we do as farming out the administration of some of the grants and what we do in-house. So I'd like to get East Tampa staff, see where we are, see where we're headed, and whether we need to add someone mid-year or in the FY23 budget. As just downtown, they're managing 4 CRAs. Several years ago, there was very little activity in Tampa Heights and Central Park. Now, as development is moving forward, the community's become more engaged. We will be looking at and evaluating our staff capacity and the demands in the coming years, and do we also need to add some support staff there also?
Any other comments or questions? Go ahead.
I respect what Mr. Carlson's saying, but the bigger picture is that the constituents are tired of waiting for the projects to get done. They're tired of the applications not being processed because there's so many and only one person trying to handle such a big job. I mean, and that's why I said we have to look at maybe outsourcing some of that tree stuff, whatever, but it's got to move because the program is working, gentlemen. It's working, and we got to get it moving because you're talking about almost 400 people, and people are still trying to apply. On top of that, for the upcoming year, we're getting way behind, and people are getting kind of antsy now. So that's why I'm talking about the staff, Mr. Carlson.
If I could, Mr.
Councilman Carlson.
I agree with you on East Tampa. The questions I get are mostly about Ybor, but I just think based on the workload or the percentage, we should just have some answer that we can give to the public, and then we need to have the benchmark to make sure that we're looking at it correctly. Thank you.
Councilman Goods, to your point, you are correct. It is working so well that more and more and more residents would like to take advantage of how well this is working. And without this CRA, it wouldn't work. So, we have the yin and yang of it is so good that we need to bring in more staffing for it. So you are correct, sir. Ms. Van Loan, please.
Oh, yin and yang, I never had heard that. I heard of chicken chong, but never yin yang.
Yin and yang, yin and yang, whichever. It's my language, I'll talk it.
I got it.
I'll speak it.
So if we can have the PowerPoint again, thank you. So actual costs, these are the salary costs. And there are a few things that go into the salary costs by CRA. Again, the number of employees and also their level and classification. So in East Tampa, they have 4 positions, and they're just a little bit higher than Ybor, and some of that is driven by the fact that with a new ED specialist and a new housing counselor, they will be starting at more of a lower to mid-grade salary. And as I mentioned earlier, Eva Hughes is only, East Tampa pays about 60% of her salary, and the rest is divided up among some of the other CRAs that she assists. In Ybor, you have your 2 staff people are topped out at the top of their pay range because they have been here for so many years. And so your staffing costs are also dictated as the longer people are here, they get better at their jobs, more efficient at their jobs. They can handle more work when they get more efficient in their jobs, but they also do have the extra costs associated with paying people after they've been here 10 plus years versus just a year or 2. So Ybor has had a much more, as I mentioned earlier, stable workforce just in the past couple of years, so they have not seen that reduction in their staffing costs because they have not had an influx of new employees. Any questions about salaries?
Comments or questions? Please proceed.
And I just want to address what Councilman Carlson said about overhead. So Ybor pays rent because they used to be at the GAC, and back in '07, everyone was at the GAC. East Tampa was at the GAC, Ybor was at the GAC, the German American Club, I apologize. And when East Tampa had the D3 station that was built, we were able to build ourselves a set of suites and a meeting room as part of that facility so that we could be in the East Tampa community. At the same time, the CRA board and our department's administration also wanted to move the offices for Ybor out into the community so they were more accessible. Just like you have that focus on community policing, they had the focus of us being out in the community, accessible, where the business is happening so that they could access us regularly, and that community engagement could be much more organic than coming to an office building, coming up to the 3rd floor where there were multiple different city departments, and also be able to have space for our meetings. So originally that was when the decision to pay rent. At some point, if the CRA board does not want to pay rent, we would just have to find, work with the administration to find a city facility that we can put them in. We are limited in city facilities within the Ybor CRA district, so that would have to be a discussion where we would come back to you and say, here's some options, and what is the trade-off as to not having that rent each year or not having them immediately in the community. So again, if that is something the CRA board would like to pursue, we can have that discussion in the coming year, as that lease has about another 8 months or a year and I think it expires April of '23. So until then, we are in that lease.
Councilman Carlson.
Yeah, I think there's a third option, which is to share space with somebody else, and the proposal that I've heard in the community is the Ybor Chamber.
And if we share space, they have to be able to accommodate 20 to 30 people showing up at a CAC meeting, and parking also in the adjacent area. The chamber hasn't approached us about sharing space, but again, if CRA board would like us to look at that, we were looking at other options when we knew that the lease would be coming up. So those are discussions. We've looked at some of the other casitas. We've talked to the city as they look at some of their casitas on Centennial Park, as we also look at that this is meeting space. So it's not just office space. How do we accommodate the CAC meetings?
Any other comments or questions? Ms. Van Loan?
So again, most of the confusion lately that we get is from the Ycdc and what it is versus our staff. And we did talk to you a little bit about this back in February on a related motion that was made about our CAC membership. So I just want to clear up for everyone, including the listening public, about the Ycdc. The Ycdc is a nonprofit standalone organization. They are not, as the Ycdc, your CAC. They are not the CRA. They are a standalone nonprofit organization. They do not receive any funding from the CRA. We do not pay them any money for staffing, for operations, or anything else. They do not have any staff. With that said, what they do is they do receive revenues through the paver engraving program, and they get donations. There are several festivals and events throughout the year that they get donations. They're at a table, and then they use those donations for some small community-focused expenditures, as I note below. They only have an average of about $20,000. It goes up or down depending again on the paver program and their donations, but they have a very small budget through their checking account. Their expenses out of that checking account, again, the cost for the paver program, we do use them as a CRA as a pass-through to pay the special events grants. There is no fee, there is no administrative fee, and no part of the money that goes through their checking account stays with the Ycdc checking account. We pay the Ycdc the exact amount for the grant that is then paid out to the grant application. There was an annual Cigars for Soldiers program, so every year they spend $500 to buy cigars and ship them to our soldiers who are overseas. Because of the community coming in, whether it's the ambassadors or anyone coming in, they also pay for a water cooler and the water bottles at the office. If they send out flowers for condolences or illness, that comes out of that budget. For our other departments, our city doesn't pay for that. So if you see flowers sent on behalf of anyone from the city, that is the city staff that is putting together that money to let people know we appreciate the relationship we had with this person, and that we think they believe they have recognition. In Ybor, they have this fund that can help pay for that. Your holiday party that many of you have attended, the vast majority of the holiday party is funded through donations and someone hosting and bringing the food and party favors. Our CRAs do not pay for food. So that gap in any donations for the holiday party also comes out of the YCD funding. And then over time, there have been one-time grant requests, like by the historic nonprofits of $1,000, but those were like one time, and the YCDC has been able to meet those needs. So overall, this is a very small, nonprofit, and these are the kind of things that their budget is used for. With that, when the CRA board established the CACs, it is in your CRA policy for CACs that our Ybor and our East Tampa staff do staff those community groups. And part of the reasoning behind that is the importance of keeping that engagement and the communication and the alignment between the groups, and also not having multiple community groups that are the connection to the CRA board and speaking for the community. So our staff in that capacity, both in Ybor and East Tampa, our staff do the logistics. We send out the notices, we arrange the meeting space, we take the minutes, and we will help coordinate with speakers. Our office are the primary contacts for both of those groups. Our staff participate in the meetings, and any follow-up that is from a CRA standpoint out to them, we will also handle, and also to the broader community. In YCDC, as a nonprofit, they do have a authorized agent. It has been the CRA manager. The reason for that is because the CRA has a physical location and the YCDC does not, and that physical location would change with the officers every time the officers changed. As being acting as our CAC, we have turnover in the board of the YCDC that is in alignment with your CAC policy. Most boards do not have turnover every 2 years the way that we do. So because of that continual turnover, because of the alignment with the CAC membership, it was easier to have the CRA manager designated as that agent for the continuation of operations. While the CRA manager acts as treasurer, none of our staff sign the checks. So everything that we handle, it is the officers of the YCDC that come in and sign those checks. So hopefully also that clears up a little bit of what that relationship is. And it sounds like from earlier comments, I am going to take a quick minute to run through this. Back in February, as I mentioned, we've been asked to come talk about this. The YCDC, you have there the original goal and purpose that is in their bylaws, and they've been in existence for well over 20 years. And their goal, along with our CRA, the same type, to help take the activities that facilitate the redevelopment of the Ybor area. It is part of the CAC policy. It sets out all the membership, and it is the current policy of the CRA board to use the YCDC board members as your CAC members. And they also have the ex officio members. All of that goes through that process, and then we present that to the CRA board. The procedures, because this question has come up again, how do we select members for the YCDC? Again, it comes through the board first. So the YCDC, as the YCDC board, they collect all the applications that we do for all of our CAC members. They go through with the same vetting process that all the other CACs go through. Do they meet the requirements set out in your CAC policy? And then once everyone has been vetted, that they are eligible, they look at the categories that are set out and make sure that they have everyone for each category. If they have more applicants, then they have seats or seats in categories, then that nominating committee will actually then make a recommendation to the Ybor CAC/YCDC board as to who they recommend be those new members. Currently, that selection is then just voted on by the CAC/YCDC board, and then we present that new board to the CRA board. As I mentioned in February, the challenge we have had, as is brought up, the confusion between YCDC and CAC, and until 2021, we have had no identity for the Ybor CAC as a CRA. Everything, regardless of the legal entity doing the work, had always been written about, talked about, and promoted as YCDC. One of the things that we did back in February, and I've been working with staff with, because of a lot of this confusion, is to try and very much separate and be very specific in your language, that when it's YCDC, you say YCDC, and when it is the CAC CRA and our activities as a CRA and our funds as a CRA, that is very specifically referred to as the Ybor CRA or the Ybor CAC. Back in February, again, there had been a concern that this was the only CRA that chose its own members as opposed to having CRA board in the process. With that, I came back to you, this is the last slide, back in February, that your options were to keep the process as is. We recommended some improvements that we can make. Everything in blue we have been doing since the first of the year, but one of those options was to look at how the CAC membership is chosen. And one option you could do is to follow the East Tampa model, that once a slate of candidates is put forth, it would come to the CRA board first, and you affirm that slate of candidates or officially appoint them, or it can go back to their group for a vote. Lastly, you could establish a CAC separate from the YCDC board and follow the remaining of the other 6 CACs, that all of the CAC members are appointed directly by the CRA board through the application process. So this is what we had talked about with all of you in February. Again, we took the actions that we could as a staff on our own. And that is the end of the information. And I am happy, again, I know this is a very complicated, it's confusing for us too. Ybor for so many years, and as we kept looking at our documents, our correspondence, all of our communications, the intertwining and not being specific and descriptive in our language has contributed immensely to that confusion, and we understand that. And so that's what I said, with all of our documentation, everything we can do, especially through the communications consultant that we have in Ybor, to make sure that we are very deliberate in how we describe who's doing what.
Comments or questions? Councilman Goods.
Gentlemen, this is what I'm talking about. There's no continuity. You've got other people doing other things versus the other hand. And at some point, we have to reel it in to where we're all on the same page. We're not. It's confusing. even when you go to describe it, Ms. Van Loan, it's still confusing. At some point, your office is gonna need to make a decision to bring to this board to say, okay, we have to stop the confusion. Here are our final 1, 2 recommendations, and this board needs to make a decision. It's too confusing. That partnership deal in East Tampa, it's totally confusing. And I'm just saying, if it's confusing to me, who sits here, and then you have a board that's confusing, and then you have the constituents who have no idea where to turn to for the right information. So my suggestion would be that you come back to this board with some final thoughts to put on paper to get some consistency, because we're not consistent. I yield back, sir.
Thank you. Councilman Carlson.
I agree with my colleague. I think it's very confusing, especially to members of the public. And I would recommend that that EBOR in particular just be a CAC, and then whoever runs Ycdc can decide to do whatever it wants with it. My impression in the past is that Ycdc did other things and bigger things, but if it has always been just the holding tank for the CAC, it's very confusing. And so, I appreciate all the volunteers. There are a lot of great people that are involved in that board. But all that would happen is the title would change. It would just more explicitly be the CAC, and everything would be clear and easier to understand. We don't have to change anything else except the names and if there's any kind of legal structure, and we don't need to have any kind of formal arrangement with another group like that. Now, they can still partner if the Ycdc continues. They could partner with Ycdc, they can partner with Chamber, they can partner with Rotary, and anything else. But and they should partner with all of them. But just to make it clear that this is an advisory board to the CRA, I would suggest we do it that way. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
I would say
Councilman Goods.
I would say it'd be the same thing for that partnership too. It needs to be defined. Thank you, Ms. Fennell.
And as we brought up, and Mr. Massey brought up when we discussed this earlier in the year, in order to effectuate that change, there will be a whole series of documents and plans and your policies that we will have to update in order to effectuate that change. So we'll come back with all that detail and just what an implementation of that would look like.
Real quickly, I believe that we came forward with a lot of this information back in February, so what we'll do is probably repeat a lot of it. What complicates a little bit with the East Tampa partnership is that it's actually written into your community redevelopment plan that will act in some official capacity, so we may have to address the plan as well. But we'll be happy to look back, pull back all our information and come back to the CRA board with that for you all to look at again if you would like.
Thank you. Ms. Van Loan, are you going to bring this back to us under our advisement, or do you need a motion for this?
We'll come back either way. So.
It'd be helpful to have a motion, I think, just and maybe give us, I think it's mostly repetitive of what we did in February, but maybe helpful to do it a couple months from now to make sure we have enough time and we can work through any other additional questions that came up today.
So moving Mr. Massey's recommendation.
I have a motion made by Councilman Good, seconded by Councilman Carlson. All in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Let the record reflect that it passed unanimously with Councilman Dingfelder being absent.
And for clarification, a couple of months, we can come back in December?
December CRA meeting in December.
Perfect. Correct. Thank you, sir. With that, we are finished with our staff reports and ready to go towards the required approvals.
Item number 6. Go ahead.
Item number 6, this you approve the actual refunding for this project at the September meeting. This is around the Emily Arena. There are public realm improvements that have been recommended that they be made to the arena or to any of us for the pedestrian safety as they leave the arena and are interacting near the streetcar. Normally we would just, as a CRA, go ahead and do these improvements, but due to the nature of the events around Amalie Arena and the timeline to get them done, we are looking to enter into an agreement so that the arena can handle them, get them done quickly, so that they will not cause problems as they start to have more and more events. Again, you did approve the money. The agreement, the funding agreement itself was not finalized at the last meeting, so we're now bringing the agreement. And the agreement does include that they do have to meet all permitting and all the other requirements, just like we would to build that project.
Entertain a motion for the
So
resolution.
moved.
There's been a motion made by Councilman Good, seconded by Councilman Maniscalco. Is there any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Miranda,
Yes.
Dingfelder, Carlson,
Yes.
Maniscalco,
Yes.
Viera, Citro,
Yes.
and Goods.
Yes.
Motion carried with Dingfelder being absent a vote.
Items number 7 and 8 are 2 facade grants. The first facade grant is 5112 North 22nd Street. This is Fastlane. He was one of our first partnerships for land and facade and getting a new business in the North 22nd Street corridor. And now, after 14, 15 years, his building is in need of a little refresh. And so he's requesting a grant for $8,161. Additionally, we have the CDC of Tampa. They have like an incubator small business strip building. It is a for-profit building that does pay taxes. It is located at 2705 East Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Drive, and they're asking for $26,700, again, for the facelift, the parking lot, and you have pictures in your packet on that one.
Move number 7 first.
I have a motion made by Councilman Miranda, seconded by Councilman Maniscalco. Is there any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Dingfelder, Carlson,
Yes.
Maniscalco,
Yes.
Viera, Citro,
Yes.
Miranda,
Yes.
and Goods.
Yes.
Motion carried with Dingfelder being absent a vote.
Move number 8, Mr. Chairman.
Motion made by Councilman Miranda, seconded by Councilman Maniscalco. Is there any discussion? Roll call vote.
Carlson,
Yes.
Maniscalco, Viera, Citro,
Yes.
Miranda,
Yes.
Dingfelder, and Goods.
Yes.
Motion carried with Dingfelder being absent at vote.
Second.
Ms. Van Loan, did you want to discuss number 9 first?
I don't need to discuss them. You've got the information. There are
Thank you
2
very
facade grants and EBOR, but you've got all the information.
Thank you very much. Motion made by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Council Goods. Is there any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Maniscalco, Viera, Citro,
Yes.
Miranda,
Yes.
Dingfelder, Goods,
Yes.
and Carlson.
Yes.
Motion carried with Dingfelder being absent a vote.
So moved. Second.
Motion made by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Goods. Is there any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Goods,
Yes.
Maniscalco, Carlson,
Yes.
Dingfelder, Miranda,
Yes.
Citro,
Yes.
and Viera. Motion carried with Dingfelder being absent a vote.
Item number 11 is the resolution I referenced earlier for the Tampa Heights Riverfront, doing the text amendment for their community redevelopment plan. This reso starts the process so that we can now move it forward to the Planning Commission and the City Council public hearing date.
Second.
Motion made by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Miranda. Is there any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Maniscalco, Viera, Goods,
Yes.
Carlson,
Yes.
Dingfelder, Miranda,
Yes.
and Citro.
Yes.
Motion carried with Dingfelder being absent a vote.
Item number 12, at the September meeting, you approved the community garden by the Urban Progress Alliance. Mr. Andre Hale came and presented. We just did not have the reprogramming, so this is the reprogramming of $45,011 to fund that program that you approved last month.
Second.
Motion made by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Miranda. Is there any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Goods,
Yes.
Citro,
Yes.
Viera,
Yes.
Maniscalco, Carlson,
Yes.
Dingfelder, and Miranda.
Yes.
Motion carried with Dingfelder being absent a vote.
Item number 13 is an appointment to a vacant position of Mr. David Bailey to the Ybor CAC.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Councilman Miranda, seconded by Councilman Goods. Is there any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Dingfelder, Carlson,
Yes.
Maniscalco, Viera, Citro,
Yes.
Miranda,
Yes.
and Goods.
Yes.
Motion carried with Dingfelder being absent, I vote.
And if the CRA board would indulge me, we have provided you with a draft letter of support and participation in a proposed grant application that has come up through the federal EDA. And this grant, if approved through phase 1 and phase 2, could infuse into the Eastern Manufacturing Warehousing District of East Tampa 20 to 25 million into smart manufacturing, along with workforce development for our residents, and it's a customized for the smart manufacturing with the goal of making an actual manufacturing hub for smart manufacturing and getting that focused in East Tampa. And I also have Tony Brown of the EDC here, should you have any more specific detailed questions I can't answer. This would be participating, the first part is a phase 1 grant of $500,000 that the EDA will supply so that applicants have the resources to really put the time into defining the application for part 2, which would be for the actual then implementation and construction of your project if awarded phase 2.
Before I entertain a motion, I know Councilman Goose is itching to say something about this.
Well, you know, everyone knows that I'm trying to move the needle in East Tampa. And to move it, we have to find areas that we can move. There are a lot of pockets that we can move. I'm glad that Mr. Brown has come aboard the EC over there, and it's been some experiences that we've taken drives all throughout East Tampa. And his background is in CRA. He's been a CRA director, so he understands and knows the parameters of CRAs. Him and his whole staff and his boss, we took a drive all throughout East Tampa. We found some pockets that they're looking at, one being on Columbus Drive. I think we have a lot of manufacturers, that buildings are just sitting there. They need to be put some people to work in there. So I'm glad that they were able to find this particular grant and try to partner and get us involved so we can bring a vibrant area to that location, because hopefully we could get the grant and get awarded. But I think if we get it, I believe that it will be a game changer. And you look at the strategic action plan, it's when he talked to me, it's there. I look at a couple. I'm going to say in public, there are a couple of the properties that we talked about on Hillsborough Avenue and things like that we could bring a different game changer. So I'm happy for this process. Hope that the council members who've been briefed on it will support it. But I think it is a game changer for East Tampa folks.
Councilman Miranda.
I have to agree with Mr. Goods. I think this is an opportunity to work and live close to where you work, and continue to have more traffic where you can walk to work possibly, and other than transportation. And as we know, we're growing, everything becomes much tighter and much quicker. And if you live close to where you work, it makes it much better.
Anyone else? Final statement from me. This is, this is an overused term, but this is a game changer, without a doubt. It covers all the bases: employment, education, entrepreneurship. This will help the community in all those aspects, and I see nothing but great things coming from this grant opportunity. I'll entertain a motion. Do you need a motion, Ms. Van Loan?
Yes, please.
Thank you. A motion is made by Councilman Goode, seconded by Councilman Maniscalco. Roll call vote.
Carlson,
Yes.
Maniscalco,
Yes.
Viera, Citro,
Yes.
Miranda,
Yes.
Dingfelder, and Goods.
Yes.
Motion carried with Dingfelder being absent, I vote.
Thank you, sirs. That is all for staff.
Thank you.
Mr.
Go ahead.
Malone, maybe Tony Brown or some councilmen can know who Tony Brown is.
Yes,
I
Tony.
think you see him in the background there, so people get familiar with him, and maybe he can get appointment with all the other council members in the near future to meet with everyone.
So I also, as I introduced Tony, I just want to also mention that this position that he fills at the EDC was specifically created to come up with a transformational project. And as soon as he started, he reached out and met with me, and we talked, and I was able to bring him into East Tampa and sell him on East Tampa. And USF, as I mentioned in my email to you, had already been looking at this kind of institute, and Tony, through his work, has really gotten them to focus and agreed to bring this to East Tampa. So with that, this is Tony Brown.
Thank you. Tony Brown, Director of Community Development for the Tampa Bay Economic Development Council. Mr. Chair, members of the board, I want to thank you for your letter of support. We are extremely excited about this opportunity. It actually creates for us up to a $75 million opportunity. And we want to give a lot of thanks to the University of South Florida.
Go Bulls.
To the University of South Florida for their support, because they for many years have been trying to find funding to develop a facility that they could support small and medium manufacturers to use technology to improve their efficiency. So we asked if they would join us. And not only did we ask if they would join us, we asked if they would put this multi-million-dollar facility into East Tampa. The whole purpose of the grant is to grow a particular industry, and we are proposing to grow our manufacturing base, our cluster of manufacturing base. And so this facility, being in the heart of East Tampa, that is of close proximity to our highways, to the port, and in a 30-minute drive at the hub of East Tampa, you have access to 900 companies and over 20,000 jobs. There is no way that the community of East Tampa should be one of our poorest, highest poverty areas. We have a major workforce component to our program that includes the career source of Tampa Bay, the career source of Pinellas County. We have received over 35 letters of support from companies, nonprofit organizations as part of this application. It is a national competition of a coalition of organizations to talk about how together we can improve our community. And so, as Councilman Good said, we want to thank him. He has taken us around East Tampa on a number of occasions to find where can we create a placemaking opportunity. And I'm here today on behalf of our organization and Mr. Richard to tell you that we are committed to the growth and economic vitality of East Tampa as it relates to the industrial corridor. Any questions?
Questions or comments?
But Tony, it's been a pleasure meeting with you and the team over there. You called me, you had the interest. We went around, we introduced you to Michelle and some other good constituents in that community that really want to see it move and can give good leadership. And you've met some of those. You think you're already showing your leadership, being at the kiosk presentation on 22nd, meeting multitudes of the 14 neighborhood association members that were there. You saw how stacked it was about getting something there, a wow that was there, that they can, those businesses can put their photo on. We're glad that Ike was able to partner with us and get that kiosk. So again, thank you, and we're looking to get this success and get this train moving.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Mr. Brown, thank you for your vision. Thank you for your help. Again, this is going to be a game changer for East Tampa. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's go to information reports and new businesses. Councilman Vieira. Councilman Maniscalco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It has come to my attention that today is National Dessert Day. And until 2 o'clock across the street at Likes Gaslight Park, there are $1 ice cream cones in celebration of National Dessert Day and Sweet Mama's Ice Cream and their grand opening. So y'all know I like ice cream. And,
Yeah, but this isn't diet. This isn't slimming ice cream.
It's okay.
Don't you normally go to the place?
It's a $1 cone, you know? The only thing better than that is the 50-cent cone at Burger King.
Oh, man. I never mind. Councilman Carlson.
No, sure, thank you.
Councilman Goods.
Just two items. Ms. Van Long, I see you still there.
Yes, sir.
Let's talk about the tree grant. Gentlemen, I'd like to make a motion that Ms. Van Long's office research and then bring aboard some arborists. It's key for this program. Also have an aggressive approach to outsourcing these tree projects. And that way, and the reason I say about the arbor, because we have our own arborists, it can help with the speed of the program, because now we won't get gouged, because people were gouging, and it will help with the cost factor. Because some people say, well, it's $2,500. Well, that tree didn't cost $2,500 to cut, Ms. Miranda. So I think having that person aboard with us and be able to facilitate will move this project along. again, and you can work on the minority process you're working, but right now, an aggressive approach to get those trees cut.
We have a motion made by Councilman Goods, second by Councilman Miranda. Roll call vote, please.
Maniscalco,
Yes.
Viera, Cedro,
Yes.
Miranda,
Yes.
Dingfelder, Carlson,
Yes.
and Goods.
Yes.
Motion carried with Dingfelder being absent, I vote.
Ms. Van Long, if you need to do any reprogramming for more money to get the arborist and get these trees cut and bring it back to this council, we can get that reprogrammed. I don't think council have a problem with that, so we know this program is working. 2, make a motion to get a report on the clean team, our neighborhood enhancement team. Want to see how they're cleaning. I want to know what if solid waste is helping them, because again, as I talk, the problem you have is that they may come get some bulk, but the trash is still there. When I go down Lake Avenue last night, unfortunately we had a shooting down there, unfortunately last night, but when I drive down Lake Avenue, I got trash all along that fence line on the right of way on Lake Avenue. Our state representative has called and complained to me and asked, what is our teams doing? I know it's a big area we got to clean, but if we need to do what we need to do to keep the areas clean, especially these corridor areas, we got to do what we have to do. So get a report on that and how we're going to move forward and operate.
I'm just thinking, contemplating myself, are we able to put a camera out there?
Yeah, I believe, well, Ybor has cameras. We buy them. If the CAC buys them, they can put them up there. Who's going to monitor them, though? That's the problem. Who's going to monitor what the cost?
And it is just a thought, if that garbage gets taken away and it gets repeated, camera may help. Just a thought, Ms. Van Loan. Councilman Miranda.
No, I just want to second this motion. We have to have a clean as possible anywhere and everywhere.
And nothing from me. Motion to receive and file.
So moved.
Second.
Motion to receive and file from Councilman Miranda, second by Councilman Maniscalco. All in favor?
Aye.
Anything else? We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Send my baby, man, and she don't come. All the doctors in hot spring sure can't help her now. He gets unruly,